I want to start this story in a different way. Not by telling you who he was, but by telling you where he was. It was almost 11 at night. The street was already empty. The shops around had turned off their lights hours ago. Inside the office, only a single cold lamp remained on, casting harsh shadows over the cluttered desk. He was sitting there, alone, with a stack of open invoices in front of him. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't trying to fix anything. His name is David, 42 years old, owner of a small business that has seen better days, father of 3 children who still believe their dad can fix anything, husband to a strong woman, stronger than he sometimes thought was fair, because she trusted that he would always handle it. David always handled it. When his father began showing the first signs of illness, it was David who scheduled the appointments, the exams, the follow-ups. When revenue dropped nearly 30% in a year, it was David who cut expenses, renegotiated contracts, and took on extra shifts. When his wife decided to go back to school to finish the degree she had paused years ago, it was David who said, "Go. I've got this." He always had it. He was the kind of man who didn't say he was tired. The kind of man who didn't complain. The kind of man who believed rest was something you did after you won. And he hadn't won yet. But there's a problem with living like that. You can hold everything together. For a while. You can swallow the exhaustion. Ignore the pain in your back. Pretend the tightness in your chest is just stress. Say everything is under control. For a while. But there comes a day when there's nothing left to hold. That night, he was staring at the numbers. He had run the calculations 3 times. He knew exactly how much was missing. He knew exactly how many days he had. He knew exactly how deep the hole was. And for the first time, he didn't think about a solution. He thought about giving up. Not on life, but on the fight. He imagined what it would feel like to simply stop. He rested his elbows on the desk and buried his face in his hands. He didn't cry. He didn't pray. He didn't say anything. He just sat there, empty. And what scared him most wasn't the financial problem. It was the silence inside him. Because David used to pray. He wasn't the most religious man in the world. But he talked to God. He asked for direction. He asked for strength. But in the last few months, he had stopped. Not out of rebellion. Out of exhaustion. Prayer started to feel like another task. Another item on the list. Another thing he was failing to do right. He tried sometimes. But the words wouldn't come. So he started telling himself, God understands. God knows I'm busy. When things get better, I'll come back. But things weren't getting better. And he started to feel something he had never felt before. Distance. As if he were shouting in an empty room. As if the sky had gone silent. And that hurt more than the bills. Because deep down, he was afraid. Afraid of failing as a father. Afraid of watching his father slip away. Afraid of losing the business. Afraid of disappointing his wife. Afraid of admitting he wasn't managing. But what paralyzed him most was pride. He didn't want to be the man who couldn't handle it. And then, that night, when he didn't even have the energy to pretend he was strong, his phone vibrated on the desk. He almost ignored it. But something made him look. Unknown number. He assumed it was a collection notice. He nearly rolled his eyes. He opened the message. And read. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt like I needed to pray for you tonight. I hope you're okay. He frowned. Read it again. There was no signature. No explanation. Just those words. He looked around the empty office. As if someone might be there. As if it were a joke. But it wasn't. He didn't reply. But he stared at the screen for a long time. And something inside him, something that had been rigid for months, cracked. It wasn't instant peace. It wasn't a miracle. It was simply the realization that while he was sitting there thinking no one saw his struggle, someone, somewhere, had stopped to say his name in prayer. He wasn't invisible. He wasn't forgotten. And that was enough to make him stand. He turned off the light, locked the door, got into his car, and for the first time in months, he didn't turn on the radio. He drove in silence. When he got home, it was past midnight. The lights were off, except in the kitchen. His wife was sitting at the table, waiting. She looked up when he walked in, and asked only, "Are you okay?" For months, he would have answered automatically, "I'm fine." But that night, the words didn't come. He stood there, looked at her, and said, "No." That was it. Not a speech. Not dramatic. Just the truth. And the truth was heavy. She didn't ask questions. Didn't try to offer solutions. Didn't say everything would be okay. She simply stood up, walked toward him, and hugged him. And right there, in the middle of the kitchen, in silence, without an audience, without a motivational speech, David finally let the weight fall. He didn't cry loudly. He didn't shout. But his shoulders trembled. And he realized how tired he really was. Not just physically. Tired of being strong. Tired of holding everything together. Tired of pretending he could manage. The next morning, he woke before the alarm. The house was still quiet. He didn't grab his phone. Didn't open email. Didn't go straight to spreadsheets. He put on his sneakers and went for a walk. The air was cold, and after a few minutes of walking aimlessly, he started to speak out loud. It wasn't a beautiful prayer. It wasn't structured. It was almost a confession. "I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't know how to keep going. I'm tired. I'm scared. I'm angry. I've been trying. I've been doing everything right. And it's still not working." He took a deep breath and said something he had never said before. "I can't do this alone." Then he fell silent. There was no audible response. No sign in the sky. No background music. But something shifted. Because for the first time, he wasn't trying to prove anything. He was simply being honest. Later that day, he called the number from the message. A woman answered. Her voice was calm. Her name was Grace. She explained she was part of a prayer group that interceded for people in the city. Families, business owners, healthcare workers. His name had been on the list for months. He asked how. She didn't know. Maybe someone had submitted it. Maybe a customer. Maybe a friend. But then she said something he never forgot. "We don't only pray when people ask. We pray because there's always someone who's too tired to ask." He went quiet on the other end of the line. Because that was exactly how he felt. Too tired to ask. After that conversation, the problems didn't disappear. The bills were still there. His father was still sick. The business still needed solutions. But David made different decisions. He sat down with his wife and showed her the numbers. No filters. No pretending confidence. He called his brother and asked for help with their dad, something he had avoided for months. He hired a part-time employee, even though he was afraid. He started sleeping a little more. And he started praying again. Not long prayers. Not speeches. Sometimes it was just, "Help." Sometimes it was, "I don't know what to do." Sometimes it was simply, "Thank you for today." And slowly, something inside him grew lighter. Not because life became easy, but because he stopped carrying it alone. Maybe you're listening to this right now and thinking, but nothing in his situation changed. And you're right. The big change wasn't external. It was internal. He understood something that took 42 years to learn. Strength isn't never breaking. Strength is admitting when you have. Rest isn't a reward. It's a necessity. And faith isn't eloquence. It's honesty. If you're watching this and you feel like you're at your limit, if you feel like you're holding everything together for everyone, if you wake up already tired, if you look at the sky and don't know what to say anymore, maybe your prayer today doesn't need to be long. Maybe it needs to be simple. Maybe it's just, I can't do this alone. And maybe, even if you don't realize it, someone is already praying for you. Somewhere. Because you are not invisible. You are not forgotten. And you were never meant to carry everything alone. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't keep fighting. It's to stop. To admit. To let someone help. To let God into what you've been trying to control. David thought he had to be the pillar. But even pillars need a foundation. And maybe what you need today isn't more strength, but rest. So if you're too tired to pray, I'll pray for you. That you find the courage to tell the truth. That you find people who hold you in silence. That you realize you don't have to prove anything. That you understand being human isn't failure. It's limitation. And limitations exist to remind us we are not God. We're just people. And that is enough. If this story spoke to you, don't ignore that feeling. Maybe it's time to stop pretending you're fine. Maybe it's time to send a message to someone. Maybe it's time to say, I'm not okay. Because sometimes healing doesn't begin when you pray perfectly. It begins when you admit you need help. And sometimes, when you're too tired to pray, someone prays for you.